So, he claims to be raising money for some basketball program or daycare center.
And the money comes in and the money goes out. No hoops, no daycare.
Okay, so say we get Clay Davis and say he flips.
Well, then he takes us up the ladder.
To who? I mean, if Clay is stealing from his own nonprofits.
That's an easy case for us to make with all the paperwork we got here. That's a straight up theft. You know, a tax charge or two, but there's money that all this paperwork only hints at. Money that doesn't show up on a campaign finance report. My guess is that Clay Davis knows about that too.
I don't know, man. I like street work more.
You'd rather sit in a surveillance van days on end waiting to catch Tater handing Pee-wee a vial? This, detective, is what you're telling me? A case like this here, where you show who gets paid behind all the tragedy and the fraud, where you show how the money routes itself, how we're all of us vested, all of us complicit.
Career case, huh?
Baby, I could die happy.
Now, downtown Lester Smooth might be one of my favorite police officers on the wire to this day. And I've come to view Lester and McNulty as the Steph and Clay of the Major Crimes Unit. And I'm not trying to be neglectful to the other players on the team, because I also like Carver, I like Sitnor, and as a lieutenant I would love to have Presbalewski on my team, simply for his ability to figure out a puzzle or decode something. And this is important because Presbo might come off as awkward and clumsy and unnecessary, but his natural gift for the paper trail actually makes him irreplaceable in the unit. But still, Lester and McNulty are in a league of their own when it comes to natural policing. And it's not just the statistics that make them the best, although they do close a lot of homicide cases, but it's more so the intangibles that they bring to the unit. As annoying as McNulty may be sometimes, we can't deny that he motivates the people around him to work with integrity. Lester and McNulty got their own way of reminding their peers that doing the bare minimum and getting a beer on the way home is not being a cop. Valuing statistics over actual police work is not being a cop. And rising through the ranks solely for the sake of power without any interest in the job or in the community is not being a cop. It's actually self-destructive. This is how police departments become complacent with their incompetence. It starts by trading off your honor for numbers on a paper, stat sheets that have no purpose except misleading people that y'all actually making progress.
I know the problem seems insurmountable, but we are making progress. Take a look at this chart.
It's a numbers game, and numbers games breed more numbers games. You need a 20% hike in the hiring of black officers to keep up with the city demographic. But that's also got to be reflected straight up the chain, which means fast-tracking some people past where their, how do I say this? Their experience warrants. And he who owes his good fortune to the numbers abides in them. Got to show arrests are up 15, 20%. We'll worry about the quality later. So what you saw out there, it's a con game, a band-aid on cancer. So no, I'm not with this, but I do follow orders.
A band-aid or cancer. Now, that might be the perfect way to explain the numbers game at the Baltimore Police Department. And it kind of reassures me of why I've always hated the saying, numbers don't lie, which is a stupid saying, because numbers don't tell the truth either, do they? Numbers only tell one part of a story, which leaves the door wide open for people to manipulate numbers to support their own narrative. Trust me, most weak arguments today have the saying numbers don't lie somewhere in its premise, from sports commentators analyzing the game and players to mayors and police commissioners describing how crime is down in their city.
Crime is down, Odell. Medical people tell me this could work. I mean, a 14% decline in felonies citywide. I might be untouchable on this. Now look, we need to think. See if we can keep this thing going without calling it what it really is, huh? Jesus.
Now, I believe I heard somebody on a History Channel say that inside the army of a tyrant, the only truly good soldiers are those who rebel. And Mayor Royce may not be a tyrant, so to speak, but when your mayor has this kind of the end justifies the means mentality, what you get is incompetence hidden behind numbers. You get desperate decisions like Amsterdam and eventually homeless serial killers. And it becomes understandable why your soldiers become rebellious. See, the politics played down at City Hall does determine how effective a police department can be. So we can't just give the cops hell, but let these politicians just give us a speech and go on a merry-go-way. But we do. So we end up with airhead cops in our neighborhood, like Herc and Carver.
Where you at, shit, Bird? You're in handcuffs in my house looking stupid, ain't you?
Fleeing and eluding? We have a drug charge here?
Loitering, a designated drug-free zone.
Let me rephrase. Do we have drugs?
He raised up when we hit his corner and he grabbed this bag. We pursued and recovered the bag.
But no drugs.
And they whipped my ass.
Western District way.
So what did we learn? Using half my district canine in the copter to bring a 14-year-old to bay? What did we learn?
That you can't raise up and run from a drug horn in Sector 1 without my boot finding your ass. Right?
No, Herc. What we learned is when we have a mayor that is obsessed with analytics, it breeds police officers that are obsessed with petty short-term arrests. And without chasing worthwhile criminals that are actually smart and have at least a common sense level for discipline, it also makes police officers soft and simple-minded like these two. Because when you gather intelligence first, at least a 14-year-old that you lock up will have enough drugs on them that it was worth the chase. But no, this is a blatant shot at the stagnation of the department, because from season 1 to season 3, it seems like Herc and Carver forgot more wisdom than they actually gained, because they went from the major crimes unit right back to resorting to having no strategy, using stop and frisk tactics.
And Herc takes the alley to cut that off from Calhoun.
So me and Truck go up the wrong way on Stricker Street? You got a badge, remember?
And we're doing the same one block over, so they can't come to ground that block neither.
Now the thing is, when we jump out on these little cocksuckers, there'll be a designated runner.
Who's gonna sky up just so we get to chase his ass?
Now, but fuck him. We let him go and jack every other motherfucker who stays. Let's mount up.
And let's not forget that Carver became a sergeant because he snitched on Daniels by leaking information to Burrell back in season 1. So he didn't really earn his position, and it actually shows in his leadership. And this scene is like a poor imitation of how Omar trapped the fat young boy back in season 1. But the difference between Carver and Omar is Omar understood that the runner would use the alley as a means to escape. So instead of wasting my energy chasing you, I'll just meet you there. But Carver draws up this tired ass pincer move where the lookouts are going to see you from a block away. And instead of putting an extra man at the top of the alley just to box everyone in, Carver says,
But fuck him. We let him go and jack every other motherfucker who stays.
But you end up chasing them anyway. And I feel the need to explain this because these are really the narcotic cops that your city is paying for. They're actually losing their street instincts. They're losing the patience to gather intel from reliable CIs. And they just disregard all of the nuances of how street guys think nowadays. Recently, I was just watching this documentary on some cops in Newark, New Jersey. And in 2022, they still depend on stop and frisk to get guns off the street. And like most cities who still use the Terry laws, yes, you might find some guns occasionally, but most of the time you're just harassing people and only finding small amounts of drugs. What this leads to is your jails becoming overcrowded with bullshit cases like simple possessions and probation violations, while the killers and the rapists run wild on the streets. And worse is the civilians start to build up a hatred for the police, a distrust, because y'all also stopping and harassing them just because they might dress like street guys or someone you deem a criminal.
Swear to God, I'm seeing citations for jaywalking. We're locking people up for open containers, for disorderly, for loitering.
The neighborhood people, sometimes they appreciate quality of life arrests.
Except we're locking up the neighborhood people. Some of my guys, all they see are the stats. I mean, the election's fucking over, right? Who are we doing this for?
The reason y'all are still doing this is because y'all new mayor is truly ambitious. See, Carcetti campaigned on crime. So whether it's election time or not, crime needs to come down if he's planning on a second term or becoming governor, which he does. And what's funny to me is all that talk about change and you leave the city in a worse predicament than Mayor Royce. See, as a councilman, there wasn't enough money or power to save the city, so you run for mayor. But once you get in the seat, there's not enough money or power to save the cops and the kids, so you run for governor. And I'm sure if The Wire had a season 6 or 7, that Carcetti would be running for president, still telling Baltimore, I got y'all on the get back. Now, somebody in my comment section had asked me, who do I believe is a better cop out of Lester and McNulty? And I don't know about better, but I think I would rather have Lester's wisdom and his experience on my team over McNulty's intelligence and his obsession to win once he starts a case. But then again, it's hard to say because they're both good at different things. Like I said, McNulty becomes obsessed with a case if he respects the target, which is great for the department but is tragic for his personal life. And he also seems to be genuinely intrigued with street culture and how it works. I think being a cop is more than a job to McNulty. Notice that when he interrogates people, his tone is always more curious than threatening. And occasionally, this leads to him getting people to snitch when he has no leverage or authority to do so. This is actually how the show comes on.
I gotta ask you, if every time Snot Boogie would grab the money and run away, why'd you even let him in the game? What? If Snot Boogie always stole the money, why'd you let him play?
God, this America, man.
Guess what he said?
What?
You gotta let him play. It's America.
No fucking way.
Did I make that up?
He give you the shooting?
Ray Newport's in the Greg Lehigh's grand jury. It's download.
Now, Lester is a different type of fox. He's just as rebellious as McNulty, but much more discreet with all of his mischief. Lester is also ex-military. I believe he served in Vietnam, which explains his admiration for discipline and structure.
They're driving 200 miles every couple of weeks out of sheer caution.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
What is it?
The discipline of it.
And the reason I like Lester so much is because I believe he's the most versatile cop they have. This old man could track down a kingpin, he could track down a drug lord, a senator, all at the highest level, knowing every law he needs to do so, inside and out. This is impressive because he's also patient enough to do long surveillance. He's hard enough to be in the trenches doing field work. He's very good at espionage. The man literally infiltrated Avon's organization and sold them some pre-tapped cell phones. Now that was heavy. But most of all, Lester is highly competent in following the money.
You follow drugs, you get drug addicts and drug dealers. But you start to follow the money, and you don't know where the fuck it's gonna take you.
And do you know that Lester actually had Clay Davis red-handed and could have got him over 30 years if they just brought in the feds and shared intel with him, which Lester suggested.
30 years?
With leverage like that, this case needs to go federal.
Outstanding work, Detective. Let me have some time to digest this. Counselor, a moment.
And yeah, the feds would have got more credit and a bigger headline, but Clay Davis wouldn't be rainmaking people anymore. But for Mr. Bond, whom I hated throughout the show, it was never about Clay being devious, more so about getting recognition off of Clay's conviction, so he himself could run for mayor.
Is there another way to go at this? How strong are our theft counts?
Straightforward document cases. 4 counts. They're a lock. He stole from his own charities.
We convict. That's 10 years per count. Nothing to sneeze at, even without the bank charge.
And as we know, this gamble came back to bite the city in the ass. And this time, not due to incompetent police work, but due to frivolous political decisions. This loss to Clay is solely on the state's attorney and his self-serving ambitions. He decided to come out of his office and fight the case himself, after not fighting the case for years. He also decided to call the press on Clay's private grand jury hearing. See, Mr. Bond plays all of these games with the media, but ultimately just ends up embarrassing himself.
Yeah, but Mr. Bond wanted to try this himself. See if he couldn't grandstand his way to City Hall. Well, you have the headshot, Detective, but no gun with which to fire it. We can't take this case.
It's all on paper.
You had canceled checks. You had the bank account. You had his bag man on the stand.
We had a city jury.
Now, we've been gathering strain on Clay Davis for 6 years, Detective. 6 years. We've had a file open on that shakedown artist. And now, after you city sons of bitches have managed in a single week to transform Clay fucking Davis into Martin Luther King Jr., you now come to me with this, which you had in your back pocket all along, looking for the federal jury of mostly white faces to remedy the problem. Well, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Now, I think I'm gonna end this one right here. And I'm gonna try to give y'all some new content sooner rather than later. But for now, it's your boy Swilts, y'all. You hear it, a man's world. Like, comment, subscribe, and all that. It's time for me to get out of here, y'all. Out.